Welcome to What the F is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean, CODEPINK's weekly YouTube program of hot news out of the region. In partnership with Friends of Latin America, Massachusetts Peace Action, and Task Force on the Americas, we broadcast every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on CODEPINK YouTube Live. Today's episode is titled Challenging the U.S. Narrative Against Mexico. On Sunday, April 10, Mexicans went to the polls to determine whether sitting President Andrés Manuel López Obrador should or should not remain in office to finish the remaining 3 years of his 6-year term. Of the approximately 16 million citizens that participated, over 90% voted yes. Yes, AMLO should continue his presidency. Several of the energy reforms envisioned for his remaining 3 years are not supported by Washington, as suggested in a series of anti-energy reform articles published by Bloomberg beginning last year. The most recent article, titled Mexican Opposition Party to Vote Against AMLO's Power Bill, was published April 4, just 6 days prior to the April 10 referendum. And then on April 22nd, published in the Washington Post, an opinion piece titled, AMLO has already lost half of the people who brought him to power. It is clear what Washington wants, but what do the Mexican people want? To give us some context as to the April 10 vote and the ramifications of the results is journalist Alina Duarte joining us live from Mexico City. Alina reports for Sin Censura, has a Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern program live on Sin Censura. She's also a journalist with Canal Catorce here in Mexico City. Welcome, Alina. So happy to have you back on our program.
Thanks for inviting me once again, Terry. It's my pleasure.
So why don't we start with you giving us some background as to what led up to the April 10 referendum, where all that started, and why it was so important that it was actually carried out.
Okay, well, there's a lot going on now in Mexico. Definitely, there's, I think, the most important part of this administration. The last 3 years, we've seen a lot of improving the social programs about this campaign of the media, the corporate media against AMLO's administrations. But now we're seeing now the fight, the struggle. It's more visible than ever. So what we saw last Sunday, we had a recall referendum, and it's amazing, because if we go back to the history in Latin America, we remember the referendum against Chavez in 2015. It's 2005, yeah, after the coup in 2002. And we remember that was the opposition, the one that was inviting to vote in that moment, and Chavez won with 60% of the 70% of the participation of the population at that time. It was amazing, it was incredible. He was pretty sure that he was gonna win, and what we saw last Sunday here in Mexico was totally different. We saw a president calling for their supporters to participate in this referendum. This is the first time here in Mexico that we participate in something like this. This is the first time also during this administration that we participate in a consulta popular, in a popular referendum too, last year in August, calling for a trial for the former president. So we are transitioning to a participative democracy here in our country. I'm sure about that. And last Sunday, we needed the 40% of the total of the population that can vote to participate in this referendum. Only participated 20%. The opposition in this country didn't want to participate. They said that it was only to legitimate AMLO's administration. And of course, they were right. AMLO was pretty sure that he was going to win. He is one of the most of the presidents with most of the support, like in general, in planet, the globe. He is, I think, the second one with this support. He's around even in conservative polls, he has around 60% of the support of the population, but we're pretty sure that it's around 70%, and it's a lot considering that we're still like at the end, but we're still in under a pandemic, and he has a lot of support. So around 27 million people participated last Sunday, and more than 90% said yes to the president to continue his mandate. And it was amazing, simply amazing, because we had an electoral institute against the population, against the obradorismo, against the president, and against this so-called fourth transformation, la cuarta transformación here in our country. So even when we had everything against this referendum, people participated. It was not a surprise. AMLO has a lot of support. Specifically, he has more support after the elections in 2018. Remember, we were under neoliberal almost a dictatorship under pre and after with the PAN in this country. So people were really, really tired of this kind of government. So they decided, even when they weren't supporting AMLO, they were really, really tired of this government, tired of repression, of persecution. So that's why AMLO won with more than 60% of the votes in 2018. So now it's more important, though, so this, what we saw this last Sunday, because we are in the middle of an approval of an electrical reform. And I think it's the most important action that AMLO has done during his mandate. And it's not looking for the nationalization of lithium, but it is looking for the control of exploration and exploitation of this mineral, one of the most important nowadays in the whole planet, the so-called white gold. It is used for technology, for cell phones, for laptops, for technology in general. And we remember that was one of the main issues why Evo Morales was defeated in a coup in 2019, the lithium. So we are in the middle of a big battle here in Mexico. It was planned to be approved, this reform, yesterday, but now it's going to be approved this Sunday is the discussion. So we're expecting for thousands of people to participate in this demonstration, trying to put some pressure on our legislators this Sunday.
You know, this is, well, there's two things. First, can you explain to the audience what cuatro transformaciones, 4T, four transformation?
Yeah, I think this is something that it's part of this nationalist government in the region for the last decades. We've seen how in Bolivia they call their change process, el proceso de cambio, to this government of Evo Morales, and now with Lucho Arce in Venezuela, under the neoliberal governments, they called the Cuarta República, the Fourth Republic, and then Chavez changed it not only to the Bolivarian Revolution, but also to the Fifth Republic. And now what we're seeing here in Mexico is this narrative that we are under a big transformation. The first one that AMLO is considering to say that this is the fourth transformation. It's the independence, the process of independence. The second one is the revolution in 1910 here in Mexico. And then the reform. There were a lot of reforms here in Mexico to separate, for example, the church from the state, to keep forward against the conservatives here in our country. And this, AMLO is saying all the time that this is the fourth transformation. So we're expecting, and I insist that that's why it's so important what we've seen not only last Sunday, but also what we're gonna see next Sunday with this discussion. I think this is one of the most not only symbolic, but really like the most important initiatives that AMLO has going forward against the transnational interest, against the I wouldn't say the oligarchy in this case of this reform, but it's about the sovereignty of this country. So it's not a little conversation about energy. It's a whole battle what we're gonna see next Sunday. And I'm sure that this is a battle that it's not only about what's gonna happen about with the votes in the Congress. This is a battle that we are gonna fight in the streets, that we are already fighting in the media, in the independent media. We are fighting every single day against the New York Times, against the Washington Post, against Forbes and Los Angeles Times, and all of these media that all the time are saying that AMLO is a risk to Mexico. You know, this narrative in the whole Latin America that we are gonna be Venezuela, that the Sao Paulo Forum is gonna be like our I don't know how to say it, but you know, it's the same narrative in the whole processes against Xiomara Castro in Honduras, against Lucho Arce in Bolivia, and the media has been fighting with this narrative that this reform, that the referendum, that every single thing that AMLO does is against the democracy, is against the human rights, it's against, you know, this same narrative. So this is gonna be a big battle next Sunday, and we're expecting for a like a huge demonstration in the streets.
Well, you know, this is all the narrative from the US. What you're describing is, you know, the template, the cookie cutter narrative from the United States. When a nation dares to proclaim national sovereignty, its own independent foreign policy, its own economic policy, its own military policy, if it has a military. But also, you know, you bring up the lithium. So this for Mexico is also is about natural resource sovereignty, petroleum, lithium. And we saw this, and I think you would agree, throughout the elections, Bolivia, fall of 2020, you were there, all the way through December of 2021, there was a theme throughout Latin America and the Caribbean where populations voted for governments that were focused on preserving national sovereignty, preserving their natural resource sovereignty, which is basically an anti-colonialist statement, and also for governments. People voted for governments that had an economic program focused on uplifting a wide swath of the population. And those economic programs were anywhere from one step to the left to revolutionary leftists, but nevertheless, they were economic programs focused on uplifting a broad segment of society. So this, to me, what you're describing to us is just a continuation of this theme, of this process happening throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And I would argue actually, being led by Mexico in many ways.
Yeah, actually, this is something I'm really fun because all the time I'm saying like I'm real sure that the audience that is following me all the time is a little bit tired that I keep talking about Latin America all the time. But this is the same what we've seen in Latin America for the last decades, and I won't say it only for the last 20 years, but for the last I don't know, maybe 5-6 decades. What we saw in the coup against Salvador Allende in 1976 was precisely because they wanted the natural resources of Chile, right. And they assassinated Salvador Allende, you know. Yeah. So what we saw also in Honduras in the coup against Manuel Zelaya in 2009, what we saw is because they wanted the oil, they wanted the natural resources of Honduras, and also in Colombia or in any single country in Latin America, it has been the control, this Monroe Doctrine of the US in Latin America, trying to control all the nations. And Mexico is not a deception, you know. I might say that a lot of my leftist and revolutionary friends all the time are saying that maybe AMLO's administration is not a socialist one or not an anti-capitalist, but also it's not that easy being the neighbor of the US.
No.
It's, you cannot
Yeah.
wake up and say like, okay, we are gonna expropriate or we're gonna take control of the transnationals, AMLO might be assassinated next day. So even when it's not that easy, AMLO has been radicalized not only in his speeches but also in his actions. We remember, and
Yes.
we've been talking about this, Terry, you and I, all the time.
Yeah.
Every time that we see each other, we're talking about this amazing speech that AMLO gave last year during the centenary, the anniversary of the of Simon Bolivar. How do you say
Yeah.
the
Well, we say the 238th anniversary of Simon Bolivar's birth. And that was,
exactly?
he gave that talk on Discurso on 24 July. And I think you and I both agree, and many of our friends, that it was probably the most important speech in the Americas last year.
Yeah, definitely. We listened to an AMLO defending Cuba, talking about another organization that might substitute the OAS. When
Mhm.
we've seen the role of the OAS during the last years, not only in the two last years, but also like in the last 20 years or more in this country. And this wouldn't have happened 2 years ago with AMLO. AMLO has radicalized his vision of Latin America. All the time he was saying that his best foreign policy was the intern policy, and now we're gonna see next month he's gonna travel to Cuba, to Central America, to Argentina. He knows already the role of the FMA, the IMF, the
Mhm.
role of the OAS, the role of the U.S. imperialism in the region, and I think he's doing a great job. I might say I have a lot of critics on his migration policy. Of course, it's something that has been like this. I don't know how to say, but when the U.S. Is asking AMLO to do something, the government is always asking to do something about migration policy, and AMLO has been clear that it's not the most progressive policy what the 4T, the fourth transformation, has about when it comes about migration. So even with these things about migration, he has been near to someone like Jean-Luc Mélenchon in France. In France, yeah, I confuse my
Right, yeah.
French, my French, my Spanish.
No,
I'm sorry.
this is a Spanglish episode. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so
It's
he has
part of
been
that 3,000-mile shared border with the United States.
exactly,
The
exactly.
cross-cultural. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and we've seen also an AMLO near to Diaz-Canel from
Yeah.
Cuba, and these
And
letters.
making sure Maduro was invited to the CELAC summit last September
Yeah,
as
and that's
the
yeah.
democratically elected president of Venezuela, if not the
It's a
US
huge
appointed
thing.
president.
Yeah, exactly. Even when the U.S. is asking to their colonies to detain Maduro in Europe or even the U.S., AMLO invited him to the CELAC meeting here in Mexico City. So
Yeah.
I think it's something really important what is going on. Remember, 3 years ago, Mexico was in the front, in the first line, attacking Venezuela all the time in this group of line. And after AMLO took power in 2018, we saw Mexico in the OAS and everywhere, like just respecting the democratically elected government of Venezuela
Yeah.
and things like that. So returning to the lithium, I think that this is maybe the most important battle of AMLO's administration
Mm.
in this last 3 years. Even when he's not talking about nationalization of the lithium and only about the control of exploration and exploitation of this resource, it's pretty important. It's also talking about the control of electrical energy. It's not talking about the whole control. The Mexican state, it's not going to control the whole electrical energy in this country. It's going to take control of 52% of the industry. And it's enough to make these transnational, these oligarchies really, really pissed, really angry, and they're attacking. Yesterday, it was just amazing. In the Congress, we saw this lobbyist acting during the session. Actually, the president of the Congress has to stop the session because he said, like, okay, we cannot continue if we have people that they're not member of the Congress, just hanging around here in the Congress.
Yeah.
And it was an Italian lobbyist, representing a transnational, sitting next to the PRD of this party that used to be from the left here in Mexico, just sitting next to this congresswoman, like talking about the electoral reform. So I think it's huge. I think it's pretty important what we're gonna see. We're expecting an aggressive attack of the corporate media during the next days. We've seen
that's already happening in the north.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is happening, and we've
Yeah.
seen this specifically. This media outlet created with Mexican quotes unquote journalists that are based on Delaware. It's not a coincidence. They created a company, a media outlet called Latinos, that they're attacking every single day from the U.S. with, financiación. I don't know how to say it. The
Financing.
funding of
Funding.
of not only Mexican politicians, but also from enterprises. They have been attacking the Mexican administrations for the last year and a half. It was created, if I remember, in 2019, as I said, in Delaware, in the
right
US.
After he was inaugurated.
Yeah, and they have been attacking all the time. For example, they try to create this expectation about the house of AMLO's son in Texas, if I remember, it's okay, saying that it was an energy company that was, like with this, that it was a whole problem, that it was this enterprise was funding AMLO's son. At the end, they couldn't prove anything, but they've been doing these kind of campaigns during the last 3 years, specifically this media outlet only for the last 2. But we have been every single day. Actually, one of these of these people, of these journalists, quotes unquote, of Latinos, yesterday there was an article of if I remember, in the New York Times. Was okay.
Well, there was an article, there was an opinion piece a couple days after the referendum on the 10th. In the Washington Post. I mean, it's very, very clear since, consistent. I mean, since his inauguration, there's been, once he laid out in his inaugural address what his vision was, particularly wanting to be able to make sovereign decisions about natural resources and energy production. That's when we saw, and I think this is really important for the audience to understand, is that's when the anti-AMLO narrative from the US began. And it's not unique to Mexico. It's unique to any country, but specifically those in the hemisphere of the Americas that have any notion of national sovereignty, which also includes having, the right to recapture their sovereignty over what they do with their natural resources. And that is playing out very much so here. I think it's really fascinating regarding last week's or Sunday's referendum, Sunday the 10th, April 10th, that the vote was on Sunday, which is how elections are run in Mexico, and that allows for everyone to participate, or makes it much easier for registered voters to participate. But what was fascinating to me was this particular Sunday, Sunday the 10th, was Palm Sunday. And in a majority Catholic country, that's a pretty significant day for the INE, or INE, as we say here in Mexico, to select for the date of the referendum. It wasn't a date chosen by the president. It wasn't a date chosen by his party, Morena. It was a date chosen by the INE. And that was, There's no way they didn't know what Sunday, April 10 was. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, definitely it was not a coincidence. And returning to this journalist I was talking about, this journalist from Latinos, and the one who wrote in the Washington Post yesterday, last Monday, I don't remember when. It was also not a coincidence that the father of Leopoldo Lopez, you remember this leader of the Venezuelan oppositions of the radical right wing, father of Leopoldo Lopez is a member of the European Parliament, and he, as a parliament, he was saying that the president AMLO was attacking this journalist, Loret de Mola. So everything is united, you know, the international right wing are collaborating in every single way, not only in the European Parliament, in the media, in the corporate media here in Mexico, in the US, the right wing in Latin America is also pretty connected to the PAN, the right wing party here in Mexico. So we are gonna fight a big battle this Sunday. So we call to the audience to be really aware, that can help to spread this kind of messages, to see, to keep looking, because I'm really surprised. Well, not surprised. I don't know what's the word, the excellent word, but I would like to create in the U.S. Audience this expectation of what's gonna happen, because we're gonna need you, you know, as the Venezuelans, as the Bolivians needed all the U.S. citizens during the last years, specifically when the U.S. tried to create destabilization. I cannot always, I can't pronounce that word. Destabilization. Oh my God.
Destabilization. Is that? Yeah. That's okay. That's okay.
I think that we're gonna need the U.S. audience to be aware of what's gonna happen next Sunday. And I mean, in the rest of this administration, we're gonna have only 3 years. We're just in the middle. 2024 are the elections, so we are just around the corner. And I think this is gonna be. I won't say that we are under like a coup strategy or something, but I might say that something similar of what happened in Brazil with Lula, with Dilma, also.
Well, they're discrediting.
Yeah,
there's an overt attempt to discredit what the Mexican president is doing and what the Mexican people elected him to do.
Exactly.
It's a discrediting at the very. I mean, that's probably a too politically kind word to use, but
yeah, and that's why I said, like, millions of people voted last Sunday, you know, in the middle of a term, after a pandemic, after everything, after a media campaign in Mexico and in the US and in an international media campaign. We have a president democratically elected with more than 60% of approval in this country, and they're trying to create this image of an approval of you know, like, people, we don't like the president and whatever. So we've seen this before, specifically during the last 3 years in Latin America. So I will say that we need every single person that is watching this to keep looking of Mexican politics, to watch what's going to happen, to see what's going to happen next Sunday here. And I mean, in the rest of the administration, we're going to expecting to fight more battles, not only with the electrical reform, not only about lithium. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting what's gonna happen.
Well, it's our job to keep the people in the states informed about all of this, and I hope that we can have you come back in another week or two and talk about the results of this coming Sunday's electoral reform vote, because that is going to be so significant and is going to set the tone for the next 3 years and beyond for Mexico. So thank you, Alina. I want to remind our audience that you've been watching What the F is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean, Code Pink's weekly YouTube program. We broadcast live on Code Pink YouTube every Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And also don't forget to catch Code Pink Radio every Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern on WBAI New York City and WPFW out of Washington, D.C. And please be sure to follow what's happening in Mexico. And we at Code Pink will do our very best to keep all of you in the States informed as to how things continue to progress here. Thank you so much, everyone.